All right, recording is live. This is me and Ikana's Power Rankings video for the Plasma Division and Lightning Division. So the kind of
Hello.
introduce yourself.
Hi, everybody. I've never done a video before, but you are all very intimately familiar with who I am. Um, I've done some PRs in the past, but I don't know if anyone's heard my voice unless they've actually spoken to me. And I try to keep it that way, but
Yeah, and there's not going to be a face reveal unless we get uh, NordVPN sponsor. So for now, it's just me. So as
I just
a
realized
sort of
this is the one computer I have that actually has a camera on it.
so you have the power, you're just refusing.
I have the power.
I tried to track down that picture that you sent like a year ago of you from vacation, um, where you were like drinking a cocktail or something, because Gabrielle didn't. She like doesn't know what you look like, um, and I was like, I know that I've seen pictures of him, and then I just couldn't find anything. So she's come to the conclusion that you're catfishing me, and that you're not.
Maybe if
Yeah,
I get Trey's like bug suit, I can do a bug reveal.
a bug reveal. Yeah, that'd be good. So further rankings here, Ikana and I have both gone through individually and ranked the teams in their division based on. So we had two different methodologies. I think yours is basically who do you think is going to make the playoffs. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and mine went.
I went
Yeah, go ahead.
I basically went like, all right, so current drafted team and how they, cohesion, strengths, weaknesses, and where they fit into the division, the placement from the previous two seasons, and then sort of a catch-all other of previous championships further away than that, other leagues and different servers, how cute they are, all sorts of good stuff like that. And I have collated all of that into a pretty nonsense ranking. I went 1 to 6 because I am pretty much just focusing on our playoff runs because I think after that, literally anything can happen. You just got to win a couple games and you can be in the finals. But that was my general methodology.
And then for mine, what I did is for each team, I kind of thought of them in two ways. One is how functional of a team is this? Are these 10 to 12 Pokemon? Are they going to work together? Do they have any obvious weaknesses? Are they missing type coverage? That sort of stuff. So just sort of overall team strength. And then I gave each team sort of a vibe score. Like, do these teams have Pokemon that can run variety of sets, surprise opponents, get wins where maybe they shouldn't? Sort of more like the how much draft spice can you throw into this team to win matchups where you shouldn't. And then I came up with a 1 through 8 of each division as well. And then figure what we'll do here is we'll go through and just give some of our impressions on each of these teams, talk about what we like, what we don't like about them, and show our individual rankings. And then Ikano and I will try to come to a consensus about 1 through 8 of each division, where we try to sway each other's opinions about, for instance, Peter's team, which he kind of likes, and I think is a little bit of a pile. So how about we go ahead and kick things? Excuse me.
You want to start with you or do you want to start with Peter?
Yeah. So this was strange when I opened the spreadsheet. I opened it up and I was the first team, and it's really hard to create a power ranking where you start with yourself. It feels so self-serving, and like obviously you like the team you made, or you wouldn't draft it. So I feel when I was making my list, it's like, okay, well, the first 10 minutes of me making my power ranking is me just jazzing myself up about all the great picks I made. So instead, why don't you go first and jazz me up about all the great picks I made?
So I have an equal amount of bias for Alex 16. Ever since the duos win, I always have to support the boy. But my original power ranking, I got to you first in Plasma. I was like, I think I got to come back to this. I literally wrote this dude, that's it, and I didn't actually think that was very helpful. But basically, after last season, I have a hard time doubting your ability. Even if that team was actually extremely difficult to prep for, I don't want to call it good, but it was a very good draft team. Um, it's hard to doubt your ability. You could literally have like little cup mons, and I think you'd still make a pretty solid run. But regardless, I think you have a good team. You have some good walls. You don't like it, but I thought Raichu's a decent Terra. We saw Chad do well with it last time. you've got some good split attackers, some good variety in Zoro and Lucario and Reggie and all sorts of stuff like that. I like your hazards. I don't always love Toadscruel. I think he's kind of the glue here, and I think that if there's a lot of pressure on him, that could buckle. That could be a point of weakness. Um, but I think that regardless, you have drafted a team that will get you into a pretty good position. Let me pull up the actual Pokemon in it. Yeah, I've never used Bombardier, but I have used or seen everything else a ton over the past X number of seasons that I've played. And I think that, yeah, in an RU league, this is a pretty threatening team. And I think there's a lot of Pokemon that can bring, like, that one set that you really were praying they weren't going to bring, and then they brought it, and now you kind of lose. Like Calm Mind, Suicune, or Body Press Regirock. If you're just not quite prepared for it, it could be it.
Yeah, and that was something that I think last season really changed a lot of my drafting philosophy in terms of like what is actually good on a team, because like I it was a bad team. I had a bunch of random weather setters, but I think that the ability to have surprise sets, like I ran Charizard every week, and it could run 3 Terras, and each of those Terras could run 3 or 4 different sets, and a lot of them, you couldn't create checks for both of them at the same time, because if you guessed wrong, then it would set up something that would beat the check that you had for it. So I think kind of what I've been trying to do with this team is pick guys like Zoroark, Lucario, Regidrago who can run, physical or special, just based on the matchup, and trying to, just get that one right turn to get an opening, especially in an RU league where the walls are a little bit weaker. There's not a lot of good Fairy or Steel types.
Mm-hmm. There's a distinct lack of recovery.
Distinct lack of recovery. So for
not on your team, but like in RU in general. I mean,
yeah. I like my team. I think that I like all these Pokemon. I think that they're all going to be fun to use. I definitely don't think that I have the strongest team in this division, because I do agree with you that kind of Toadscruel is not, a lot relies on Toadscruel being able to come in and either remove hazards or set up hazards or be a special wall, and it's not great at that. Kind of the same with Suicune and Weezing. They're pretty good, but not reliable long term. And then all of these mons too, Mesprit, Bombardier, Regirock, Raichu, they've got good use cases, but
they can be underwhelming.
They can be underwhelming. So for why don't we just keep going? We'll power through these top 8, and then we can say our rankings.
As a final thought, I think you'll be fine as a player if you keep it like tricky. I think a lot of this hinges on Zoroark being the right Pokemon, and maybe like a level or 2 deep of, oh, they think it's going to be this, so therefore I'll make it this with this set and sort of beat it out. Which always has a lot of potential, but it requires you to specifically be pretty creative in your team building around it.
Yeah, it's not going to be a team where I can just grab my 6 reliable guys and throw them on kind of regardless of matchup. I will have to...
I think that's a good way of putting it.
Find, yeah, that's the thing too. Like, everything here does have a use case, and nothing itself is too strong. So I think it will kind of depend on how well of prep I can actually do against people. One synergy I really like between Zoroark and Lucario is that you really want to throw Dark Moves out onto Zoroark, and Dark Moves give Lucario a attack boost. So I want to make that work against someone this season. That's kind of my goal, but let's see. All right, on to Thrive's team. So why don't we take turns switching off who gives our initial thoughts. So I'll give mine here. I think this team is way too top-heavy, and the Pokemon at the top are not strong enough, I think, to win games on their own. So Jirachi, Mienshao, and Raikou, I think, are all really good draft Pokemon, but I think they're really good when they're paired with something that it's a little bit stronger in terms of the role that it fits. So something like, Raikou and Zapdos, Galar, or Raikou and Terrakion, or Jirachi and Salamence. Because I feel like these 12-point mons, you either have something that's really good at its role of a pivot, or like a utility mon like Jirachi, or you have something that just has like an overwhelming amount of power. And I feel like none of these 3 have an overwhelming amount of power in a way that's kind of like Manshao hits really hard, but you know exactly what Manshao is going to do to you for the most part. It's going to be choice scarf, choice band. It's going to throw out strong fighting moves. It's occasionally going to U-turn and has good coverage. Raikyu's kind of the same thing. You know, it's choice scarf or choice specs. It's got strong lightning moves. I probably still get Scald. I'm not sure, but you know, these two are kind of locked into what they can do with a little bit of variety. And then Jirachi, you know, can run a million different sets, but you know, unless you have the perfect
All of them
set,
unreliable.
yeah, unless you have the perfect set for the perfect situation, it is still a psychic type with good stats, but nothing that's great. And I think having three, I think this is the only team that has 12-point. Okay, and Chad's team, which I think has some of the same problems, which we'll get to it eventually. I think having this many 12-point Mons, like, you see the drop off pretty quickly. Serena and Staraptor are good Pokemon. You know, they're a little bit constrained in terms of what they can do. Serena's slow, gets good physical coverage moves, and can spin. Staraptor is frail and a bit slow. And then you've got, you know, these 4-point, 2-point guys who are really unreliable in their role. Maybe you'll hit the perfect matchup where Pillow-Swine is useful, but you probably won't, and you're probably running these 5 plus Articuno every single week, with Articuno having to act as like a bulky Roost defog set, just so that you don't lose too much offensive momentum with all the pivoting you're doing and with some of your frail or unreliable recovery sorts of Pokemon. So I like a lot of these Pokemon, but I think that the team just is too top heavy and not deep enough, and it's going to make it a bit easy to prepare for. I have a hard time seeing ever bringing Wigglytuff, for instance. Floatzel, like, maybe it's good in a matchup or two, but I think that a lot of these Pokemon, you're just leaving them on the bench most of the time because you couldn't get enough good middle of the road guys.
I actually disagree with Wigglytuff. I feel like Wigglytuff could be more useful than Piloswine sometimes. I think there are some Pokemon on here that, over the course of a draft career, you draft some of these things and you're like, oh, I can't wait to use this. And then you use it and you're like, oh, this looked better on paper, you know? And I think that, like, Raikou, Jirachi, Piloswine, that's pretty much it. Maybe Mienshao, but that's preference, are all kind of those Pokemon where you want them to be these big stars and then they just kind of fall flat a little bit. I think Serena's the best spinner in the format besides maybe Blastoise, but Blastoise has to do multiple things, so it makes it like, as a spinner, yeah, but we'll get to that. Serena's an amazing spinner. As a dedicated role, fantastic. Let's see, what else did I have? Yeah, Jirachi is just so unreliable. You can make good stuff with it, but it also might die to a stray super. Not a stray, but, you know, two-hitted by a super coverage. And I think that if games prolong, it will not end up in Thrive's favor. I think it's, like, the faster he can win these games, the more effective it will be. Because he doesn't have the recovery, and Quillfish will have a lot of, like, weight on it as well. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Never used Raptor before, but its speed tier isn't great, and it looks like it can't really survive a fighting move, even with Intimidate.
Yeah, I feel like with this team, because, you know, it's going to be clear what people are preparing for, and Mienshao and Raikou are, you know, maybe not easy to prepare for, but straightforward to prepare for. Jirachi is really going to have to, like, be excellent every week for this team to do well.
And I think relying on, just by the numbers, relying on something like Ironhead Flinch or like Air Slash, whatever it gets, is just mathematically unhelpful.
Yeah.
Right? It might work a couple times, but it will not work every time, even if you shove it down someone's throat. Like, yeah, it's just not going to be it. 60% in Pokemon is still very low.
Yeah, and I think too, if you're relying on Ironhead, I think we've gotten as a server better about just throwing Rocky Helmet onto random things, so that you know, if you are running,
especially with Covert Cloak,
yeah,
makes it tough.
Yeah, and you know, if Jirachi's wanting to U-turn, if it's wanting to Ironhead Flinch, like, you can pretty easily weaken the power of that Scarf set. And the Calm Mind set, maybe you've just got something faster than it because it doesn't have a way of boosting its speed. So I think that it could, you know, pull out wins. It's still Jirachi. It could still, you know, Cosmic Power,
Absolutely.
Stored Power, Weakness Policy, whatever. Ironhead Flinch, you know, someone's still going to get Ironhead Flinched and lose. But I think it's asking a lot of Jirachi. but we'll see. Maybe.
Final thoughts. Articuno Galar was pretty cool, and I think that has the potential to have some great sets. I think you're kind of shooting into weakness policy to get the numbers you need, but you can take a hit and agility, and then stabs stored power. Like there are a couple of teams that don't have a dark type, maybe.
Yeah, there's definitely
In
a
the
few. Right
and so
here.
that's yeah, that's why. Sorry, Riker. Looks a little potent. Or some people have a dark type that they don't necessarily want to bring because it's not actually a good enough dark type to switch into something that has weakness policy.
Yeah, or Articuno runs Terra Fairy. Who knows? I think Terra
Exactly.
really goes a long way.
hmm But when it's going to be some sort of terror offensive threat, then it is more limited. But it still has the potential to really pop off.
Okay, moving on to Riker. What are your thoughts?
Oh man, I actually love Riker's team, and I love Riker's team because it is absolutely a team I would draft. um, Bestern and I were talking about it last night when we were doing a little bit of prep, and he was looking at it. And he's like, "These are all Pokemon you've used before, and they are, and I love them." I've always wanted to use Armorogue, but I'm always a little skeptical. I think Ogerpon and Screamtail are fantastic. I think Melodic is a tad bit underrated. Um, Not for 8 points, but I think like the general perception of it. I think this team in particular, though, I don't know. It's weirdly a little electric weak. Dugtrio is not a very good, reliable ground in that regard. This is the Thundurus that gets Prankster and Defiant, not Volt Absorb. So it was easy, since Dugtrio is so frail. Even the shit coverage moves that the electric type gets are going to be more than enough to like do something to it. It's got cool options. It's got good speed. It has a lot of utility. We all love Terra Chestnut, but I thought that it lacked like the big damage up in the front that you'd want. If Ogerpon's choice banded, then well, cool. Ogerpon's choice banded, and that makes his sets a lot more limited. And if he's not, then he has to sort of set up to get the really big damage. And if it's Specs Clawitzer, well, I don't know. It's very strong, obviously, and you might have to sack him on to get it, but I think you could just revenge it the next time something comes in. Same thing with Dugtrio. Good team. I think that it will greatly depend on, how Riker gets creative with it and what sort of sets he brings. I think there is cohesion in, well, if I bring this sort of set, it helps benefit, I don't know, Bulk Up Thundy or Stored Power Armorogue or something like that, but we'll see. I think he will definitely make playoffs, though, with this team.
Yeah, the more I looked at this game when I was writing up my little para, I was trying to find reasons to not like this team and find weaknesses. And I wrote this whole 3 sentences, and then I took a break and came back, and I was like, this isn't even true what I wrote about. I'm just trying to find. But I do think that it has, thinking on it some more. I think that Clawitzer and Melodic. I don't think it's great to have both these on the same team. When we did Monotype season, I found it really hard to. I was water in Monotype, and having multiple straight water types is tough. Just because electric is fairly common, especially with a weak ground type. So and Melodic and Clawitzer, they're both slow water types. So something that is going to be good in Melodic will be good in Clawitzer as well. So there's kind of a built-in. And then going off of that too, I think that because Melodic is the bulk on the team with Screamtail, you're going to be wanting to bring it almost every week. I just find it's going to be hard to ever bring Clawitzer or justify bringing it. I do think my general impression of this team, I can't really put it into words, but it feels like a really fast car that doesn't have a lot of gas. It's going to come out pivoting, getting off armor cannons, Ogerpon's going to hit something with a wood hammer, but I feel like it's just going to run out of steam. Because I don't think that there's Ogerpon and Thundurus, they're really good, but they're not Pokemon that I think win you games outright. They like to get in, they like to get a couple hits, they like to U-turn or Encore or something. Kind of the same with Cyclizar, Armourouge and River are kind of slow. Chestnut, Screamtail, and Melodic are really passive. It feels to me, and it feels like Riker's team that he was originally playing last season, it had a lot of really scary offense and pivot options, but it feels like as soon as he got one turn wrong, the team kind of started to fall apart. And I feel a bit like that carries over here too, where if he, stays in with Ogerpon on a turn he should have U-turned and Ogerpon goes down, I feel like the team will start to crumble. Because he has a lot of fast, kind of frail pivots, slow, kind of passive walls, and not a lot in the middle, just in terms of, bulky offensive guys.
I feel like if he loses one of these walls, like Screamtail or Melodic, the whole team kind of gets blown open, right? Like once he starts losing Pokemon, I think it gets progressively. I mean, that's the case for everybody, right? But I feel like it gets progressively more complicated to make the game plan work.
Yeah, it feels like his team is a lot more like relying on each other more than other teams, where maybe your Mian Xiao goes down and you've still got enough to make it work. But if you lose something really important, then it feels like the team is gonna crumble.
I do like Screamtail though. Best Wish Passer in the format at the moment.
Yeah, and I really like Terra Chestnut too. I think that having the option of having a second spiker is good. I think just having something reliable synthesis recovery, also solid. Can run bulk upsets.
He may be forced to make it a bit more defensive than he may want to some weeks, but
Yeah, I think he's.
That's sort of the double mix up, right?
Mm-hmm. Trying to think what else. Yeah, Doug Churio is kind of a fake ground type, but it's a good, good anti-lead. It's fast, hits hard. Yeah, overall, I really like the team. I think it's one of the best teams in the division.
Agreed.
All right, moving on to Cam. So, I think Cam's a really good player. I think that Cam's easily going to get, maybe not easily, but I think Cam's going to get in the top 3-ish of our division. And there's a lot I like about his team. But I don't agree that it's the standout best team in our division. I don't even think it's in the top 3 best teams in our division. And the reason is, I think that I think that it's too wide and not deep enough. I think that Zarude, Gengar, and Lycanroc are all really good, but they're all fast and frail. They hit different things. They have different options. Lycanroc has Accelerock. Gengar has, can run Will-O-Wisp, Destiny Bond. Zarude can run Choice Items, Boosting Set. But I think that these 3 are all kind of similar in terms of strong offensive presence, some utility, very fast. Kilowattrel, great pivot. It's, I think, probably my favorite part of this team. Just having something that is really fast for the tier, that can get into your other offensive threats, has option of running Defog, it hits reasonably hard. And I really like Klefki too. Some teams don't have a steel type or don't have a fairy type. A steel fairy type is really good. Prankster is always
with
good.
Removal and hazards.
And hazards.
Such good roll compression.
Yeah, I think Klefki is great. But then after this, I kind of hate the rest of these mons besides Basculegion. I like Basculegion just because it's reasonably fast and it's, has effectively 150 base special attack. That's hard to, argue with when you've got a decently fast pivot. Because if someone switches out on Kilowattrel and they switch into, say, a slow wall like Melodic, maybe not Melodic because Melodic probably walls Basculegion relatively well, but something doesn't want to get hit by a Thunderbolt from Kilowattrel, they switch into it, they get U-turned on, Basculegion comes in and can throw out specs, adaptability, whatever, serve. But Farigiraf, Decidueye H, Magmortar, Tatsugiri, Sandslash, I feel like all of these, they're just not doing enough, I feel like, to have so many of them on your team. I feel like there will be weeks where Magmortar, with Boots, Morning Sun, Fire Blast, probably is really good. But, kind of like with some of Thrive's guys, I feel like a lot of the time they're just going to be bench sitters, and it's going to be hard justifying using them on a team. And I think with so many of them, you're going to be trying to find reasons to use them that maybe aren't there. I like Tatsugiri, but it's kind of it's pretty frail. Like any physical move knocks it out. Decent spinner.
Even down here, I feel like it's tough to make it hold up,
Yeah, and I feel like your better removal options are defogging for the most part. Good to have a spinner, but I don't think that it's... I mean, there's a reason it's a 2-point mon. And I don't think that you have such a water weakness that you need the Storm Drain. Maybe for Lycanroc and Magmortar, but I feel like if you're trying to get Magmortar and Tatsugiri on your team, you're just leaving your better guys behind. So I don't think that you really need it for the Storm Drain, and you don't really need it for the Rapid Spin, because Cam doesn't really have a hazard stacking sort of strategy where he wants to avoid using defog. He has these 3 fast guys who are going to be getting all skills. Dunsparce is great, good Terramon. I mean, it can run a bunch of sets, can run a bunch of types. Going to be hard to prepare for, and going to be good to fit in anywhere. So I like Dunsparce. I just Sand Slash, Tatsugiri, Magmortar for Ref Decidueye. Especially if you consider, you could just get rid of Decidueye and for Giraffe and grab, Gallade. Immediately your team is better. So it's...
I think Cam just threw up in his mouth a little bit.
Maybe, but I mean, imagine this team where you get rid of Decidueye.
Yeah, I think I told him to get Gallade at some point too.
Right? And you get your fighting type, you get your psychic type. It's a different speed tier. It can run other sets. So, Inteleon, same thing. Like, that fits your other 3 fast guys. Rotom Heat even good, fits your better type. You know what? Grab Rotom Heat, get rid of Magmortar and Decidueye and Sandslash. There you go. So
that's kind of hype.
Right? So I just feel like, Cam's got a lot of really good stuff here, and a lot of stuff that could just go and make the team better. And, I say that I play in the first week. Maybe he's going to run Nasty Plot, Trick Room for Giraffe, and I'll get swept. Is what it is. I stand by what I say, even if that happens. Even if I get 6-0'd by this team, I think that he could make it a lot better just by not having as much of these sort of junk mid-low point guys.
I feel pretty similarly. I think that some of these Pokemon are excellent. Originally, I said it was like 11 good Pokemon in Sandslash, but the more I look at them, do you really want to bring Tatsugiri over some other stuff? Yeah, maybe against like Clawitzer, but then, Clawitzer are going to come. I like Klefki a ton. Kilowattrel is probably the most coveted 6-point Pokemon in the entire draft.
Yeah.
Lycanroc early was excellent, but I agree with your assessment. You probably could condense some of these other mons, especially because you got the Dunsparce for such a great value pick.
Mm-hmm.
You could probably could have condensed these into something more. I don't know if this is relevant, or rather if I should say it, but I forgot to bring just the UIH and put him down into the Terra tiers when I was doing it before, because I actually think regular Decidueye is better, and he's terrible. And I was like, I'll just grab it later. Completely forgot. Gets drafted. Oh well, what can you do? I've never used Fair Giraffe or whatever the hell it's called, but yeah, if Magmortar is one of your best special walls, I think you have a bit of a problem. Nothing on his team has a special stat over 100, and I think that's a little problematic.
That's not true.
Special defense stat.
Oh, never mind.
Sorry, a special defense stat. He's got, 4 Pokemon who are at 95, which is fine, but he doesn't have anything that's like, yeah, this is my special wall, without slapping an Assault Vest on it. And I don't think it's great to limit yourself like that, especially because those Pokemon probably don't want AV on, Decidueye H might. Magmortar probably doesn't. Tatsu might. I don't know.
I feel like if you have AV Decidueye H, it's just not going to accomplish much. It doesn't hit hard enough.
That's kind of what I'm saying. I will say I am super excited to see Gengar. I know people have used it before, but I think it is a relatively underused Pokemon for us, and I kind of want someone to pop off with it and say, hey, this guy's good, because everyone in the past it's been relatively underwhelming. It's honestly somewhat similar to Lycanroc. No one's really gone for it. I do think he's got lots of hazards, lots of removal, lots of setup, type variety, good base stats, good speed tiers. It's got a lot of stuff, but I just it could be condensed and have even better stuff without so much. You could trim the fat, so to speak.
Yeah, I think if this is a 10 Pokemon roster, it's probably the best team in the division. Just by keeping, these 5 Basculegion and Dunsparce. Because then you have so much to work with for your last 3. But, Yep. Okay, I'm going to pause the recording real.
Oh, this is a comfortable bed.
Okay, we're back. We're on. Alright, we made our way to Eden. What do you think?
Eden. Let's see, let me pull my notes. I like Eden's team a lot. I think it's a pretty solid. I think Omer said it really well. I think every Pokemon is actually a good Pokemon, and it can play a big role, and it could come every week, and no one would be all that surprised, right? Good hazards, among the best removal of anybody, like with a plethora of options there. Great pivot, great boosting. Speed tiers are phenomenal from like top to bottom. Covers a lot of stuff. I think Decidueye is also underrated. I think it does a lot of work in a defensive shift. Um, Terrakion is another one that I don't think has really shown its full potential yet. But that being said, I do not think Iron Jugs is very good. I hate relying on anything that misses. Um, 90% is pushing it, but something like Hurricane without any rain is pretty tough. But still boost your energy, and you really cannot discount boost your energy ever, especially this low. I would say that this is the best team Eden has ever drafted, and I think that she has all of the tools to make playoffs this season.
I like this team a lot. When I initially just looked over the division, I think I liked this team the best out of anyone's besides my own. The more I look at it, one thing that I kind of feel about Eden's team is that everything on this team is good, but nothing on this team is too tricky. Like Jolteon does its thing. It's going to be Terra Ice every week or Terra Fairy. Muck, Decidueye, Uxie, Florges, Talonflame. You kind of know what you're getting out of all these Pokemon. Kind of same with Tentacruel, Jugs, Flygon, and Dragon. You could have a defensive Flygon versus a Dragon Dance Flygon, but I think that for the most part, Eden's team, it will always have 6 good Pokemon, but Eden is really going to have to rely on outplaying maybe some of the more specific prep that something more versatile like Ogerpon can do against her team. So I really like everything on here. I think that all the teams will be good, but I think that Eden is going to have to play really well as well to kind of compensate for the fact that people will be able to prepare maybe a little bit more comprehensively, because for something like Terrakion, you kind of know what it's going to do every time it comes. Swords Dance or Choice Band, it's going to hit something really hard every time it comes in. Kind of the same with Jugulus. So I think that Eden's got a really good shot of making playoffs with this team. I think it's just going to rely on building a really robust team that can counter maybe one of the more imbalanced but teams that has more options in terms of specific sets to counter it.
Sort of to build on what you just said, I think that Eden simultaneously has to get creative, but cannot overcook this team.
Yeah.
I think if this team gets overcooked or overprepped, it will fall apart pretty easily. Like, oh, here's a set for this specific Pokemon, and that Pokemon doesn't come, and now there's a big hole, But I also think that threading that needle between complex and simplicity will be pretty important this season. But if she manages to do that, I think it's got some real potential.
Yeah, I think that the creativity from Eden will come in choosing the right 6 months, not necessarily making sets that are really out there.
I think that's a great way to put it. But I don't think it doesn't need to have complicated sets. There's almost a beauty in the simplicity of Flygon's going to maybe have rocks, maybe have Meteor, and then on the craziest day of the year, he can have Dragon Dance, or something like that. And obviously, that's not uncommon of a set or anything like that. But you know what I mean. I think there's when I looked at it before, there's 6 Pokemon on this team that get Swords Dance. Tentacruel, Talonflame, Decidueye, I think Terrakion, I think Muck, and maybe one other thing, Tentacruel.
Tentacruel.
And I think there was a game a couple seasons ago where Yaupon was not expecting Swords Dance Tentacruel from Peter, and it just completely swept second turn. It was pretty brutal, but I don't know. That's definitely the outlier. That is not not the normal role, and that normally doesn't pay off so well.
Yeah. But no, I really like this team. I think it's good. I think it's just going to require good play, good building.
Question for you: what'd you think of Jolteon first pick? Was it worth it?
So hear me out. Look at my team and make this Jolteon. Broken team. No,
I'm looking at a Pokemon that can 1v1 Jolteon right now.
Raichu?
Yeah, of course.
No. No, I mean, Jolteon's great. I think one of the good things about a Terra special attacker like Jolteon is that you only need two moves. You have your stab, electric, and then you have your ice coverage. And then you can
Yeah.
randomly run fairy to surprise someone who's a little fairy weak or dark or something like that. I think just having the speed is great. I think even switching the Terra to something like Muck for a week that might be more useful. You still get a lot of utility out of Jolteon just as a 4 point volt
Hmm.
switcher, regardless. So no, I think it's great.
Especially now that it has a luring voice.
Mm. Yeah, I
I
mean,
think that was a game changer.
I think that first picks are kind of fake, just because there's so much of the draft board left. Like I don't think it really matters what you pick or when you pick it. Um,
Yeah.
so I don't know. I just that's why I just pick Regidrago because I want to bring Regidrago. I don't want anyone else to have it. But I think that I don't think you get a lot of because like that's why we make the draft board to try to make it as robust as possible. Like you should have good options in every tier regardless, and I think that the hard work comes not in the first pick but like the sixth pick to try to squeeze value out of something like picking up Basket Legion or Klefki or something like that.
Right, right.
So yep, Jolteon first pick, first Aramon, but and I think it's really good. I wish that I had gotten it and I was 2 picks away, but I'm gonna make Red Shirt work. Okay, moving on to Red Shirt.
Red shirt.
I I kind of hate this team. Nothing against Red Shirt. Red Shirt had a great season last time. Drafted a great team. I think he just barely missed playoffs, but I hate this team. I think that there's way too much overlap between Slowbro and Gardevoir in terms of being pseudo bulky psychic types. I think that Braviary, Lycanroc, and Hitmonchan. I'm pretty low on the 2 point Mons who aren't going to accomplish much terrain this draft, and having three of them when your upper Mons aren't overwhelming. Like Slipper is great because it is really hard to kill, and in previous drafts where we did Natex, it's a great slow pivot. I think Teleport might even be gone now. So it's going to be
Teleport
annoying.
is gone.
So it's going to be annoying
Teleport
to
is
deal
gone.
with. But even if it had Teleport, that's not helping you get into something like a Terrakion because there's just nothing there on this team that's going to really be a breaker. I think Slitherwing has potential, but I think it's going to have to work really hard every week because it's the strongest offensive threat. Entei, I feel like, is fine. Swampert is fine. They're both good for their points, but there's just nothing there's no king of this team that everything is working to help support. And I feel like nothing on the team is versatile or strong enough to kind of, maybe you just have 6 good things and they all work well together, but I don't think that's this team.
I agree with your assessment of Slowbro. I thought Slowbro without teleport is kind of whatever. I mean, I know against Chili Reception and other than against Reggie Ice in this division. What is the difference? I don't know. I think it's pretty passive, and I almost would have liked to see it just be like a much more aggressive Pokemon. Just outright. Guard's good, but I feel like Guard's really faded out of favor in Gen 9. I'm peeved is the wrong word. I wanted Magnezone. That would have been ideal for me. But, what can you do? What can you do? I'll have my revenge for taking my magnet away from me. I love Swampy. I think Slithering is fantastic. Meredith said it well. Zorark, once it Terras, the gig is up, right? You know what it is, but that also doesn't necessarily matter. You just have to hide it until it's time, and then bam, you get another stab on your flamethrower or something like that. It can be just a very specific and very targeted Terra, and I think that's really solid. Not a ton of hazards. I don't think Lycanroc Midnight is ever coming. I just don't see it. Not when you have anything else on your team. Entei's cool. Entei's cool. Sacred Fire is awesome. He doesn't have very good removal, and yeah, I don't know.
Another
Region Mon is still a Region Mon. No matter what I say about Slowbro, it will be hard to kill, but almost to what end?
Yeah, it feels like it might have a bit of the, I'm the last Mon alive syndrome, but what does that mean?
Right. Even with Slackoff, I don't really think it's winning a lot of 1v1 situations unless it was the exact Pokemon that it matches up well against.
Yeah.
If it's the ground Pokemon or the poison guy or whatever.
Mm-hmm. One thing that I did when I whenever I see something like Magnezone, I look through the division and see what it's actually going to trap. And one thing I noticed is Lucario doesn't trap it effectively. Lucario can kill it.
Fair.
Jirachi, maybe it depends on the Jirachi set, but it might be able to.
I just got U-turn.
Revavroom often runs high horsepower.
Same thing.
Klefki probably,
or parting or U-turn.
Yeah, or parting or U-turn. Klefki probably successfully traps, so that's a good target.
Woo.
No steel type.
Nope.
Magneton, which
it does indeed trap Magneton.
It does trap and probably wins the 1v1, but a 2-point.
Honestly, I genuinely wonder what would win that 1v1 if it was Eviolite and they both had Magnet Pole.
Well, the thing too is like Magneton's faster in his Volt Switch, so I don't think it even successfully traps it.
Well, yeah, because they both get Volt Switch.
Yeah, exactly. And then
so they can't even trap each other. What's the point?
And then Orthworm, which you can probably trap a weakened Orthworm and knock it out with Thunderbolt. But if you trap a non-weakened Orthworm, it probably lives and body presses you, or Earthquakes, and you're
Earthquakes.
So
yeah.
So I don't think that you're getting a lot of value out of Magnezone's trapping ability in this division. I think that if people had drafted different steals like Bronzong,
Bronzong, Empoleon. What else are we looking at down here?
Yeah.
Gudra H. Not really. You're probably gonna lose that one too.
Registeel, maybe.
Registeel, maybe. But then you get body press.
Yeah, but I just think Magnezone's...
that's very valid. That's very valid.
Yeah. So I think Magnezone's, it's a bit hard to make work in draft. I think it's more of a laddermon when your random trap catches. I don't even think it's that good in ladder, but I think it's better in ladder than in draft where that they could potentially trap your steel. So you either don't bring it or you have it prepared to switch out.
The slow pivot Volt Switch analytic, not nothing to scoff about.
How does it get analytic?
Yeah, analytics 30 Magnet Pole, I believe.
Oh, yeah, okay. So maybe you don't even run Magnet Pole, you just use it as a good special attacker. I think
30 is not terrible, but then you live the Earthquake, but then what?
Yeah. So yeah, that's my thoughts on Red Shirt. Let's move on to you. I guess I should probably...
nothing to abuse chilly reception was kind of whatever. If that is your only pivot move, you might as well take a 2-point Mon that gets some sort of ice-based shenanigans. That was my last thought.
Yeah, why not just grab Beartick or something? Who knows? Make it prep a little harder for your team.
Exactly. Even if you never bring it, they still have to think about it. But just to use that as an example because you clicked it, I'm just whatever. Lycanroc's there. Bring Stray Brick Break.
Mm-hmm. All right, on to your team. I really like your team. I think it's... I believe that I have it as the strongest team in the division. Let me make sure that's actually true.
You did. And when I looked at your notes, and it made me a little stressed out.
I think that Infernape, Blastoise, and Iron Leaves are all great. They have a good Fire Water Grass core. I think that Infernape has enough utility to kind of poke or patch up any weakness you have against a specific opponent. Leaves, I think, is just busted. I think that if you save Booster Energy for the right time, then it can just win. I think when I had Leaves, the main thing that it was helpful for is I just didn't bring it in at all until there were 3 or 4 things left, and then just cleaned up easily. There was no shenanigans at the ends of games because you could just wait until everything was in range for it and then bring it in and sweep. And I think that you've got enough things that put enough pressure on that sort of game plan will work really well. Crocodile, I think, great Pokemon. I think 10 points is fair for it. Intimidate and Moxie, both great abilities. And I think, too, just having something that you can lead into almost anyone and get good utility out of will help enable other strategies like Shell Smash Blastoise, Infernape, Leaves, whatever. Pheasantipity, fast. It's a slow tier. Having that is always good, and it's kind of like Slowbro, where sometimes it's just unkillable, and that's really hard to deal with. But unlike Slowbro, I think you can make a lot more progress either through toxicking things inadvertently or just through running some offensive sets. I don't really like these 4 for your team. I think that Miss Magus as a Terra Captain, good, great, versatile special attacker, ghost type. I think it fits well on your team that has a lot of physical threats, things that can run mixed sets, that kind of thing. And having Levitate is always good. I think that Electrode is a bit wasted The speed is wasted on it. Um, I just it feels out of place with the rest of your team to me, and I can't quite articulate why, but um, it feels like it just doesn't pack enough punch. Where when it comes in, it's kind of slowing down the pace of what the rest of your team is able to do. Scyther, I think, could situationally be really good, but it's just hard to make work. Hard to get it in, hard to get it set up. And Altaria and Magneton, I just think are just. I know you had to round out the roster here, and you have a lot of 10-point picks, so you need some bad guys at the end. But I feel like Altaria and Magneton are just never really going to be worth bringing, and you're probably bringing, this 6 every single week for the most part, and maybe occasionally slotting in Elixir or Scyther.
Yeah, I had pretty similar thoughts. I really like my team as well. I tried to draft a team that I could fuck around is the wrong phrase, but I could sort of have a mediocre beginning and end game or middle game, and then at the end be like, oh, it's cool. I got Shell Smash Blastoise in the back or Scarf Crook in the back or something like that, and you just kind of have to deal with it with your weakened team that cannot take it. Leaves and Infernape can all do these things. Toxic Chain is a dumb ability. I read your notes and I started thinking somewhat similar things. Electrode is really fast, but like it doesn't really do anything. It's walled by Kilo. It's walled by Sundy. It's okay. But speed's nice. I needed an electric. I wanted to pivot, and yeah, okay, whatever. This is the one that beat, I guess, ground types. Everything else, you hit the nail on the head. I needed some points. I thought Altair is actually not bad for 2 points. It gets Wisp, Roost, Roar. That's pretty much it. But there were worse things for 2 points.
Yeah.
I've never used Scyther. I'm actually somewhat excited. Miss Magius is great. Anything with Levitate that you can make electric, never a bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's got a lot of trickery, a lot of utility. But I do not disagree with your assessment. I wanted to draft a team where I could bring 6 to 8 Pokemon most weeks, and you'd still have a hard time knowing what to do against it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it feels a bit like a team where you could just not even prep for your opponent, just make 6 good sets, and you'll do fine, because everything is really strong in its own right.
I wanted to do really well this season because I always want to do well, but I wanted it to also be pretty straightforward, and sometimes I draft a team that is way too complex, and I have to really buckle down and prep, and sometimes that's the hardest part. I just really don't want to. I want to throw a team together that when you look at the team builder, you're like, yeah, this slaps. This will be fine. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But it necessarily won't be because my Pokemon weren't strong enough.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you accomplished that. So, I like this team. Moving on, Trey. I think that Trey's team has caught more flack than it deserves. I'll say. I think it deserves some flack. Actually, I did your team, so why don't you tell me what you think about this?
I think Trey's team is okay and deserves some flack. I mentioned with Thrive how there were a couple Pokemon that you draft and you're like, I'm really excited about this guy, and then it just doesn't really pan out. I think Azelf is one of those Pokemon. I think on the surface you're like, wow, I can't wait to run all these unique and different sets, physical, special boosting, Scarf, he's throwing down rocks. And then, I don't know, because he's got so many options, sometimes you just get a little bit paralyzed with what you think he should be doing, and you end up with these amalgamations of sets where you're like, oh, this just kind of didn't do anything. Y'all know me. I adore Heracross. I think Heracross is good in so many situations. Fighting in Bug is crazy. Just hit your Mega Horns, no problem. Trey has great luck hitting moves. He'll be fine. Enam Merchant, I think Enam is okay. Enam Therian is all right. I wish it was better, but it has good sets, and it's just kind of an okay sponge. I like Overquill. Vaporeon's a little passive. Belly Goat. I thought Trey's team was way worse than it was until I saw him the other night, and we were looking over some of the team and prepping a little bit, and it gave me a better appreciation for what he wants to do and how he wants to build it. Seeing inside to the mind of the Trey was definitely essential. I do think it is still a little passive, but I am now pretty excited about Sheer Force Terra Tauros. I think that would be kind of fun. I thought Vaporeon lost Flip Turn. It does not, so I think that's huge. Belly Bolt's excellent. Earthworm, I think Earthworm's kind of a wasted steel type because it can't take a Moonblast. It can't really do much of the steel things you need it to do. And I don't really think Trey cares too much about eating ground moves. But maybe he does. I don't know. He's got Azelf, Enam, and Heracross who can all come in on ground pretty easily.
Mhm.
And Mudsail eats Earthquakes better than, I think, all three of those Pokemon. He'll have to get creative, but I think he can do some cool stuff. If it pans out how he wants it to, I think it could be a really cool team.
All right.
I don't really rate Regice. I think it's okay, but I love his insistence on making it work.
I think that each time, I think Trey's been playing too much Gen 3. I think each time he brings Regice, it will be making his team worse. But I do think, so, Enamorous, I know that I've been, in our like tier and chat, I've been really high on Enamorous for no reason that I can actually articulate. But I feel like there's just something about it where like between agility and Draining Kiss and Weakness Policy and Calm Mind and Iron Defense, like I just feel like this Mon is actually broken and no one has used it yet. I feel like Enamorous could be the best Mon on anyone's team. But it's not done it yet, and I can't point to any results. My vibe on Enamorous is that it is absolutely broken and no one's made it work yet.
Yeah, I think you might be thinking of the other one that people keep messing up contrary.
No, that one's worked. Hear me out. I think that it's strictly a draft. Enamorous has enough crazy... Maybe it's because it gets stored power. I think it still gets stored power.
Ooh, I'm pretty sure it does. For Trey's sake, I hope so.
Maybe not.
Sorry, Trey.
Well, but look at these stats. Are you kidding me? You're telling me this is not absolutely pro... Okay. We'll get off my Enamorous here. If Trey makes it work, I think that Enamorous can really do a lot of work in a lot of teams. I think Azelf is great as long as you don't try to do too much with it. I think just every week pick either Scarf or Focus Sash, flip a coin, and build around that, and don't try to make it do too much. I think
that's good advice.
Defensive core is solid, covers a lot of weaknesses. I think Overquill is... Trey and I are talking over New Year's. I think that he should drop Overquill and get a better defogger. Well, better defogger. Get a defogger or a spinner for 8 points. I think we'll have some options.
Yes, his lack of removal makes me question his team a bit more. We've seen teams do well without having it or not having a ton of it, and you totally can still make it work, but it's helpful.
Yeah,
you should probably get some removal.
And he also doesn't have a ghost type. So I look at Earthworm, and I think, okay, you're going to do Spike Stack, but you don't have a spinner yourself, and you don't have a spin blocker. So I think that there's just a couple things to change there where he can make his team better. Taurus, I think, will be fun. I don't think it's, I think it's in the bottom 2 of the Terramons of the draft for Plasma. I think probably.
Did you say? Oh, okay. I think you meant for the whole board.
No, just for Plasma. But I think it's fine. I think that'll be fun to use at least, and has a lot of surprise factor just because it gets all those Gen 1 normal type moves.
Exactly. There's a lot of moves where you're just like, oh, sweet, I guess this is happening. Raging Bull is normal for that Tauros, which is kind of fun, but I think you can just always rather run Body Slam.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I think this will be a good time to do our Plasma rankings and maybe try to come up with an overall. Why don't we do them division by division just to break it up a little bit?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so put one thing together real quick. Okay, so here is how we each ranked Plasma.
I guess, take this opportunity to mention that we're going to expand our playoff scale this season to 6-person playoffs. So top 6 teams make it in, and the top 2 teams in each division get a bye into round 2, and the other 8 of each division then play each other like they normally do to make it into, the next round. So 6 teams out of the 8 will move forward. Top 2 get a bye. You are really shooting for those top 2 slots.
Yeah, and I think that, with your ranking, it wasn't just team strength, it was playoff viability.
Yeah. So I didn't do I only went up to 6, and I did, all those things I mentioned earlier. I tried to make it cohesive. I haven't adjusted these since Alex and I started talking, and I do have some potential changes, but you can blame Alex for that, not me.
Well, since, not in terms of, well, tell me your thoughts. So I've got my 8. You've got your 6. What would
I
you change
actually
around?
think I would just switch where I have Redshirt and Trey.
So you would
I think
swap
hearing
out.
your logic about Trey, Redshirt's team and watching Trey build, I didn't update my stuff after I helped Trey build, or helped is the wrong word. After I looked over what Trey was thinking about, and yeah, so sorry Redshirt, but I'm gonna have to give the nod to Trey. I do think that Plasma will be insanely close.
Yeah, I
I think
agree.
it will really come down to it. It's going to be like where it is just a full on slobber knocker.
So do you still stand by Riker at 5?
I had a hard time with Eden, Riker, and Trey. I think those three, just like the top three, are going to be pretty interchangeable depending on, I don't know, maybe a little bit of luck differential, maybe how people are feeling that week. Um, but I think Riker can easily, could be like 4.
Okay. So you stand by this?
Yeah, I'd stand by that.
Cool. I'll stand by mine. Um, I don't know what we should do in terms of overall ranking. We could average them. That could be fun.
Yeah, I think that might work.
Okay. I
I
think
think
that.
that puts me and you at the top spot,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Ham. I had Riker at 2 and you had him at 5, so it's 3.5 for him. You've got
And it looks like
Eden
Eden.
as 4.5, so that would be Riker, Eden, and then Trey.
Trey.
Okay. So not too
And
different.
if I
Yeah.
had to pick, I guess it would go Redshirt, Thrive for me.
Richard. Okay. Well then, why don't we?
Which if you, average him is the same. So
Well then, why don't we go ahead and jump down to Lightning
I'm
Division.
a little concerned. I might have to leave in like 30, 50 minutes.
So that's part 1 of our rankings video. Check in next time for Lightning Division.
I could do it later tonight if you're free.
I might be. Let me stop the